The Terminator film franchise started a chain of action genres that center around the war between humans and machines. Despite 6 sequels to the unforgettable original, only the first 2 movies remain beloved by fans. After Terminator 2: Judgment Day, the films that followed never reached the heights that the first 2 films created, and it just went downhill from there. What many fans rightfully consider a better sequel to the second film is the TV show Terminator: Sarah Connor Chronicles. This show continues from where the second film ends and takes the brave route of neglecting all the sequels that came after the T2 film while still maintaining the integrity of the franchise. We're going to explore the entire series today, but before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Do it!
How did it come into existence? After the release of the third Terminator film, in which Sarah Connor dies of leukemia, writers and producers James Middleton and Josh Friedman devised a plan to bring Sarah Connor back, as she was a prominent part of Terminators 1 and 2. They wanted to deviate from the story of the films and create their own sequence where Sarah is still alive. Variety magazine reported in 2005 that a Terminator franchise-based television series was being produced by C2 Pictures, the same C2 that produced Terminator 3 in 2003. It was set to be created with Warner Bros., and the pilot was set to be broadcast by Fox Network. Josh Friedman was set to write the plot and also executive produce the series with Andy Vajna, James Middleton, and Mario Kassar. Friedman wanted to bring back Kyle Reese without disrupting the events of the first film, but the more he discussed that idea with others, the more far-fetched and confusing it became. So, in an attempt to bring a connection to Kyle Reese, he brought back Kyle's elder brother, Derek Reese, into the picture. Kyle Reese is also seen throughout the series, but he remains in the post-apocalyptic world, never traveling to the past. James Cameron, who directed and wrote the first 2 Terminator films, wasn't involved in the series, but production paid him homage by naming the cyborg that helps the Connors Cameron. It was initially titled The Sarah Connor Chronicles, but later they added the word Terminator to hit a target audience. The series initially centered around avoiding Judgment Day once again, but eventually started focusing on humanistic and religious ideas. The casting process included actors from America, Australia, England, and Canada, and it took 16 weeks to complete. After auditioning 300 actresses, Friedman finally settled on Lena Headey for the role of Sarah Connor, describing her as a tough woman. Headey was initially hesitant to play the character she had admired as a teenager, but managed to keep up with the strong image. Fans weren't happy with her casting, as she didn't portray the strong body that Linda Hamilton built for Terminator 2, but Headey proved everyone wrong by bringing the strongest presence to the show as the beloved Sarah Connor. Thomas Dekker was chosen for the role of John Connor, and he stated that he had grown up loving the Terminator films. On the other hand, Summer Glau, who plays Cameron, the Terminator sent to protect John Connor, had never watched the films. Friedman was unsure about casting Brian Greene as Derek Reese, as he was known for his role in the teen drama Beverly Hills 90210. It wasn't until they saw his audition tape that they were certain about casting him. Richard Jones plays FBI agent James Ellison, a religious man who's after Sarah Connor, and Shirley Mason, the lead singer of Garbage Band, plays Catherine Weaver, a Terminator introduced in Season 2. The filming started in 2007, taking place in Albuquerque and the backlot of Warner Brothers Studios in Burbank. Why did it end? The Fox network tried its best to continue the show, and they even went so far as to promote it through product placements, TV spots, billboards, and even a Super Bowl commercial, but still failed to elevate viewership. They ended the show due to low viewership ratings, budget problems, and the writer's strike of 2007. Although the fans initiated a campaign to renew it, the show was still canceled in May of 2009. Meet the squad! Sarah Connor. Mother to John Connor, Sarah's only purpose in life is to protect her son from Skynet and help him become the man who's going to lead the war against the machines. Lena Headey pretty much carried the show with her captivating presence and astonishing performance. In the pilot, we see her trying to live a normal life when she's engaged to a stand-up guy named Charlie Dixon who adores her and John. But when the past knocks on her door, she has to give up her happiness for the safety of her son. From being an innocent and ordinary woman in the first film, Sarah transforms into a warrior with courage and persistence. John Connor. Born to Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese, John Connor in the show and the previous 2 films is just a kid whose fate is narrated by other people while he has a hard time finding that hero within himself. Everyone that arrives from the future treats him like he's the most important asset to their mission or a threat when it comes to Skynet. But John, in the present, is just a 15-year-old boy who depends on his mother to protect him. We're able to see John in his element, how he deals with all the expectations from people, how he tries to become the man everyone says he's destined to be. The show sheds sheds light on the frustrations that a teenage boy would have from running and hiding all the time. This is reflected in the pilot episode when John just wants to be a normal high school kid. We see this innocent boy transform from being scared of what the world holds for him into someone who would kill to save his mom and leaps through time to save his loved ones. Cameron! This reprogrammed cyborg named Cameron is sent by future John to save his past self. She's an advanced model that takes the form of Allison, who is presumed to be John's close friend in the future. Her only mission is to protect teenage John, and she only takes orders from future John. Cameron is easily able to mimic human emotions as she blends in with the high school crowd in the first episode. She keeps learning about the human world and advancing herself with time. She has the capability to make decisions for her mission's benefit, lie for the bigger picture, and do anything to stop John from endangering his life. John falls in love with her, and Cameron also often shows some emotions back towards him, which are still debatable as we didn't get any sequel that firmly shows her side of things. In the beginning, she acts as a machine should and would, terminating whoever might cause problems for John, even if the family feels otherwise. She progresses to be more calculating and works according to the Connor family's plans, suppressing her mechanical impulses. Derek Reese. Derek stays behind the scenes, watching the Connors from the shadows, and only comes into view in episode 5. He has no idea that John Connor is his younger brother Kyle's son. One of the best things this show introduced was John sending back multiple resistance fighters to stop Skynet from forming. Derek's only mission was to stop Skynet from being created, and he was doing just fine terminating everyone in his way. But after he met the Connors, he formed a connection with them and got roped into the chaos this family is a magnet for. He becomes soft and considerate, which obviously affects his mission, making him less ruthless in his killings. He is later killed by a cyborg while helping the Connors, but we get to see him in the final episode of season 2 in a different timeline. Catherine Weaver. Introduced in Season 2, Catherine Weaver was the head of the Zera Corporation, who has been replaced by a disguised Terminator T-1001, who has jumped back into the past to create an AI that will fight against Skynet. Much like the T-1000 from Terminator 2, Weaver is an advanced cyborg with liquid metallic properties that can mold into any shape and shapeshift into any human or animal. Her metallic liquid can separate from the body and shapeshift into another entity on her orders, for instance, the eel in her office. She hires FBI agent James Ellison to help her reverse engineer Skynet technology and build an AI that has compassion and moral values so that it can work with humans to prevent Judgment Day. Weaver has a hard time mimicking human emotions as she fails to form a bond with the real Catherine's daughter, Savannah. Still, no one suspects that she's a robot until the end of the season when she molds into a protective shield while saving the Connors. She uses Cromartie's remains to connect to John Henry, the AI she had created, and deems him her son. She would do anything for her mission and to hide John Henry's identity from the world, even if it involves wreaking havoc on other cyborgs and humans using her remarkable metallic properties. Cromartie. While the previous films only focused on Skynet sending robots to kill John, this show realizes that it can send people on different missions like guarding Skynet's hardware stock, eliminating resistance fighters, and of course, killing John Connor. Cromartie is sent back to kill John and is introduced just 17 minutes into the pilot episode. This family just doesn't get a break. To say that this cyborg is persistent would be an understatement. It's highly intelligent and yet reckless in terminating whoever gets the misfortune of meeting him. It's dismembered by Sarah Connor in the first episode, and by the second episode, it's already piecing itself back together. It's finally terminated by the Connors and gets buried in the desert. However, its body is recovered by FBI agent James Ellison to help Catherine Weaver build John Henry. A glimpse into the show. Episode 1. The show picks up 2 years after Terminator 2 left off, where Sarah and John manage to destroy all the technology that could lead to the creation of Skynet. Sarah and a now 15-year-old John are still fugitives running from the FBI as they're blamed for the murder of Miles Dyson, who died trying to stop his own creation from ending the world. Living with a false identity, Sarah is engaged to a paramedic named Charlie, whom John also admires. A nightmare shakes Sarah back into reality, and she decides to leave Charlie and move to New Mexico with John. Charlie goes to the police to get some help, only to discover that Sarah and John are on the run. He meets FBI agent James Ellison, who has been chasing Sarah Connor because she's deemed a danger to herself and everyone around her. Charlie refuses to believe that Sarah is a fugitive and leaves in disappointment. John is admitted to a new school where he's approached by Cameron, who tries to befriend him, but John keeps his distance. The next day, a cyborg named Cromartie arrives disguised as their teacher and immediately attacks John. Cameron manages to save him, revealing herself to be a Terminator sent by future John. Cromartie captures Sarah and uses her voice to lure John into the house, but Cameron disguises herself as John and a fight ensues. They manage to run away and hide in a warehouse, and Cameron reveals that she's from 2027, the post-Judgment Day world. Although Sarah tried to stop Skynet, she was only able to postpone it. Meanwhile, Ellison investigates the incident at John's school, where 19 witnesses claim to have seen the killer with a robot leg. Back in the warehouse, John doesn't believe that he's going to be the man everyone says he is in the future. He begs his mom to stop Skynet from ever being formed so that they don't have to keep running. Sarah agrees, and the trio heads to meet Teresa Tyson, Miles' widow, to find out if Miles had shared his idea about Skynet with anyone else. Like the FBI, Teresa also believes that Sarah has killed her husband, so she tries to call the police after seeing her, but Sarah explains that she didn't kill her husband and asks for help. Teresa then clarifies that Sarah had destroyed everything, so there are no remnants of Skynet. Just then, Cromartie arrives and the trio has to flee using Teresa's van. Cameron leads them to a bank and forces an employee to lock them in a safety deposit vault where the Resistance had sent back engineers to build and secure various weapons and machines, including the time displacement equipment. Cameron puts together an isotope weapon that would dismember Cromartie and hands it to Sarah. She then initiates the time displacement machine, citing that if they don't want to run, then they need to get to the time when Skynet will be created to stop it. Outside, a SWAT team surrounds the bank, and Cromartie also arrives, tearing the vault door apart. Just as Cameron starts the machine, Cromartie also enters the vault, and Sarah shoots him with the isotope gun, dismembering him before they jump through time. They arrive in 2007 in the middle of the road and immediately become a headlight in the news. A now married Charlie and Ellison see them on TV just as the episode ends. Episode 2. John starts feeling impatient, and he's been confined to the house for 3 days while Sarah and Cameron go out. Cameron informs Sarah that John has sent back various Resistance fighters with specific missions, so the duo looks for them to get some forged IDs. But when they arrive at their safe house, there are dead bodies just lying around. While checking the bodies for barcodes that confirm their identities as Resistance fighters, a cyborg T-888 posing as a dead body attacks Cameron, and a fight ensues. When the cyborg fails to identify Cameron, flees. Sarah is enraged at Cameron for not telling her about multiple cyborgs jumping back in time and argues that she would have had more time to train John if they hadn't jumped. But Cameron plainly reveals that Sarah would have died in 2005 of cancer. They have no choice but to visit their friend Enrique for IDs, who claims that he had already retired and sends them to his nephew Carlos. Meanwhile, at home, John grows impatient and leaves the house. He goes to a mall and gets excited to see all the new technology. Using a display laptop, he searches for the bank incident from 1999 and finds out that they were all deemed dead. He also finds Charlie's picture in the newspaper and sneaks into his house. While John is snooping around, Charlie arrives and seems delighted to see John. He hesitantly moves forward for a hug, but conflicted, John pushes him away before apologizing and leaving. Meanwhile, on the bad side of town, Carlos demands $20,000 for 3 forged IDs. The trio of Sarah, John, and Cameron go on a mission to retrieve some cash from the Resistance safe house they visited earlier. John finds a safe, and they steal the bags stored there before leaving, while a man with the same barcode as other Resistance fighters is seen lurking in the shadows. After getting the IDs, Sarah overhears Carlos talking about Enrique and immediately goes to his house to confront him about being a traitor. Before Enrique can completely defend himself, Cameron arrives and shoots him dead, deeming him untrustworthy. The next day, when FBI agent Ellison is investigating the scene, it is evident that Enrique was trying to sell Sarah's information to the authorities. A garbage man retrieves Cromartie's head from the garbage site as a display for his house, leaving the rest of his body in the trash. Cromartie soon activates, and his body starts assembling itself. Episode 3. Sarah goes to the hospital and finds that there are no signs of cancer in her body. She later visits Teresa again and shows her some pictures of people associated with Miles Dyson that she has acquired from the Resistance safe house. Teresa recognizes one by the name of Andy Good, who was an intern at Cyberdyne under her husband, Miles Dyson. Sarah goes to the store where Andy works, and after throwing some hints his way, he finally asks her out. The two have dinner that night, and Andy reveals that he studied computer science but had to drop out to help his mom after his father died. He invites Sarah to his house to show her his invention, known as the Turk, which is highly intelligent and can play chess. It's evident that Andy's intentions are innocent, as he's just acting upon his love for computers. A while later, Sarah burns down Andy's invention along with his house in the hopes that she won't be forced to kill him. John, on the other hand, witnesses a suicide suicide attempt at his school. He tries to help her, but Cameron stops him to avoid drawing any attention. The girl jumps, and John can only watch in horror. He's infuriated with Sarah for siding with Cameron and stopping him from doing what's right. He remarks that they might as well let the machines win if they're just going to turn into them eventually, losing their humanity and everything that future John is all about. Meanwhile, Cromartie has reassembled his body. He forces a scientist to give him synthetic living tissue before killing him. Episode 4. Cromartie now tracks down a plastic surgeon and forces him to perform reconstructive surgery to look like one of his patients named Laszlo. Back at the house, Cameron calls the duo to the living room to show them the news about a fire in the LA docks that rerouted the Colton shipment. She reveals that Colton is a primary material in the creation of future Terminators by Skynet. She also shows them the video footage of their arrival in 2007, and Cromartie's skull can be seen in the background. Sarah wants them to relocate, but John argues that Cromartie will still be reassembling his body and must be vulnerable. So the trio tracks down the shipment warehouse. While hiding in the warehouse, Cameron spots a Terminator that she identifies as Carter, not Cromartie. Sarah wants to leave again, but John sneaks into the shipment truck to put his phone there so they can track where the shipment is being taken, but he gets trapped inside the truck as the crew starts moving. The truck arrives at the designated location where the crew is killed by Carter. John hides as he witnesses Carter freezing at the door after killing the entire crew. Sarah and Cameron manage to capture one of the crew members and torture him to tell them the location of the shipment. They arrive at Depot 37, which Cameron describes as a Terminator building factory in the future. It's in a concealed bunker that's immune to nuclear bombs. John finds a phone and calls Sarah, who's on the other side of the door. He tells her about how Carter has frozen in place, and Cameron informs him that it will take Carter 15 seconds to reboot from his standby mode. Sarah asks John to open the door before he reboots. John gets the keys from Carter's neck and opens the door before rushing towards the truck. Cameron locks Carter inside, and the trio return home after Cameron lets the shipment truck roll off a cliff. Meanwhile, Cromartie kills the plastic surgeon as well and replaces a man named Laszlo after killing him too. Episode 5. Sarah gets a call from Andy, who reveals that after his house was destroyed, he worked day and night to code another computer out of memory, created Turk 2.0. He's entering a chess competition against another machine from Japan, and whoever wins will get a military contract. Meanwhile, Cromartie visits Charlie's residence, posing as an FBI agent, and asks him about Sarah's whereabouts. Even though Charlie assures him that he doesn't know anything about Sarah, this still upsets his wife as she believes he's lying. At the tournament, Andy tells Sarah that Turk 2.0 is much better than the previous one, which upsets Sarah as she's grown to like this innocent little nerd. Sarah and John watch the match, hoping that Andy loses so they won't have to kill him. Fortunately for Andy, Turk loses against the Japanese computer. Sarah decides to sit Andy down and tell him everything in order to avoid killing him. As she walks towards Andy's room to give him the news, she bumps into a man who seems a little too suspicious. She enters the room to find Andy shot in the head. She chases the suspicious man down and tackles him in an alley. A struggle ensues between the two, but the man frees himself, only to be caught by the police. Sarah is distraught by Andy's murder and decides to talk to the man who is now arrested. Through his pictures, they find out that he's a resistance fighter from the future. Sarah poses as a lawyer to enter the county jail and talk to the resistance fighter. Meanwhile, T-888, who killed all the resistance members, purposely gets arrested to kill this man too. Sarah meets the man, and to her surprise, he's Derek Reese, the elder brother of her lover, Kyle Reese, who has no idea that John is his nephew. Derek asks her to leave as it's not safe for her, but Sarah is already planning to help him escape. The trio hijacks the transport van that is moving Derek and helps him escape, but T-888 arrives right in time and shoots Derek before Cameron can take him down and remove his chip, disabling him. Derek is taken back to the house, and Sarah is so desperate to save him that she wants to risk kidnapping a doctor. John argues, asking why she's risking her life for a stranger, and Sarah reveals that he's John's uncle. Upon hearing this, John runs out of the house as Sarah tries to prevent Derek from losing too much blood. The episode ends as John returns home with Charlie, who, after a brief pause of staring at Sarah, starts helping her save Derek. How it all ends! The show includes Catherine Weaver in the second season, who's creating a sensible and more humane AI named John Henry to join John Connor in the future. Derek is killed while trying to save Weaver's daughter, Savannah, towards the end, and the Connors suspect that Weaver is helping in Skynet's creation. In the final episode, the Connors send Cameron to kill whatever operation Weaver has in her basement, while they pay Weaver a visit in person. When Cameron enters the basement, she meets John Henry, who asks her, "Will you join us?" And Cameron closes the door on us. In her office, Weaver meets the Connors, reveals that she has come back from the future to build an AI that will stand against Skynet, and asks John to join her in this quest. Sarah doesn't believe her, even after Weaver saves them by transforming into a metal sheet, blocking the drone explosives. Weaver leads them into the basement, but John Henry has already used the time displacement equipment to jump into the future for his mission against Skynet. Cameron, who is now disabled, has helped him gain full mobility by voluntarily giving up her chip. Weaver immediately decides to follow her son and asks Ellison to pick up Savannah after her gymnastics class. John decides to leave as well so that he can find Cameron's chip and revive her, despite Sarah advising him otherwise. Sarah decides to stay behind and stop Skynet from ever coming into existence, and the two bid each other a tearful goodbye. Weaver and John arrive in the future without Cameron's body. Weaver creates clothes for herself while John grabs a jacket. They hear some dogs bark and Weaver vanishes, leaving John to face the Resistance fighters. To his surprise, Derek is leading the fighters, but he fails to recognize John, and neither do any of the Resistance fighters. By jumping to the future, John has erased himself from the past, hence no one knows who he is in this timeline, although the Resistance still remains prevalent without him ever leading it. So all the fuss about saving John Connor wasn't even necessary? The show ends as John sees his father, Kyle Reese, as he arrives with Allison, who is the template for Cameron. Season 3 might have followed two different timelines, one where Sarah would fight to stop the creation of Skynet, and another where John would adjust to the new timeline where no one knows him and the world is at war. We can only guess at the future adventures of John and Sarah Connor as the show ends on this devastating cliffhanger. Is it worth watching? This TV show redeems the franchise by pulling up the falling reputation of the Terminator films. If you want to fall in love with the Terminators all over again, you can just avoid the sequels after Terminator 2 and watch this TV show instead. It does justice to the character of Sarah Connor. Her struggle and determination are well portrayed, and it shows us the vulnerability of a boy whose fate has already been narrated by people around him. It introduces remarkable cyborgs that have multiple missions instead of only chasing after John Connor. The most remarkable of all is that it takes the risk to erase John Connor from the past and introduce us to a world where he's not even that important, as the Resistance still exists without him. Despite ending on a cliffhanger, the show is still worth watching as it takes a dive into several risky plots that even the films couldn't get to. Therefore, the show remains a solid sequel to the films that lost their magic over time. Marvelous verdict! If you're a fan of the series, you might know that Sarah Connor has been played by two different actresses from Game of Thrones. Let us know in the comments which Sarah Connor is your favorite out of the two, or if you haven't already watched the show, we hope that this recommendation might get you to give it a shot. Unfortunately, that's all we've got for this Terminator sequel, which fans consider to be the actual Terminator 3 timeline. We hope this video helped you journey through the good old times when Terminator used to be a thrilling franchise. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.